Adventure, the most popular genre in gaming. In a world where we have series like Uncharted, Fallout, Skyrim, and The Witcher, is there a game series that holds more prestige over these behemoths? Back in 1986, The Legend of Zelda was born, and with it came a revolution in gaming. For the past 30 years, Nintendo was graced us with what seems like a never-ending line of hits from this series.
Gee, it sure is boring around here.
My boy, this peace is what all true warriors strive for.
I just wonder what Ganon's up to.
We don't talk about that one.
Do-do-do-do, it's Bage Talks.
From the original to the ever-so-famous Ocarina of Time, in this franchise we were able to do so many things. From walking the lands of Hyrule, to sailing the blue seas, and to even soaring the never-ending skies. From fighting as a wolf, to becoming a helpless tree man. From fighting evil plants, to facing evil incarnate. The Zelda series has left us with a legacy like no other game has, and today I'll be going over the newest entry in the most critically receptive series of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you my analysis on The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. So I will grade the game on a scale from 0 to 100 on 5 separate categories: sound design, story, level design, game mechanics, and overall enjoyability, each one being graded on 20 points per category using a custom rubric I made myself just for this game. And with that, let's begin! The story starts with Link waking up in a strange shrine with amnesia, of course. Never heard of that before. Anyways, a voice, Zelda's of course, tells him and us the player to get out of said shrine and go and defeat the being known as Calamity Ganon. And unlike his human or boar-like form, you see this giant cataclysmic entity engulfing Hyrule Castle in a pitch black and bloody red fog. Once you have finished the 2 to 3 hour prologue, you learn that 100 years have passed since you have fallen asleep and you are tasked with defeating Ganon. That's it. There's nothing else you have to do. You don't have to complete any dungeons, you don't have to collect any weapons or armor, and you don't have to fight any bosses that aren't included at Hyrule Castle. Just defeat Ganon. If you wanted to, you could go with the most basic armor and a wooden stick to fight Ganon. You'll most likely meet your impending doom, but the game gives you the ability to complete it within the first few hours. After the prologue, you're given 3 main tasks, really only 2. Get the Master Sword, free the beings known as the Divine Beast from Ganon's grasp, and find your lost memories by finding photos. What is this, Pokemon Snap? But again, the goal is to fight Ganon. I would go more into the story, but that's not my job. Now, let's talk about some music. Unlike other games, the music was extremely diverse yet almost rarely used. Whenever you were strolling through the main overworld, the music was incredibly tame, almost to the point where no music was playing at all. It was very different when compared to other games such as Skyrim and Uncharted, which are very well known for their music. It emphasized that Link was alone and the world isn't brimming with that same positive personality it was 100 years ago. When fighting an enemy, it was very peppy and kept up with the intensity of the fight that was happening. And when facing a creature known as a Guardian, the music had an entirely different theme, letting you know this was going to be a very different fight from any other enemy. The music was also very diverse. Again, in the main overworld, it was very tame and almost rarely used. You would hear a chord or 3 notes playing together quickly at times, but the towns and stables had music that suited them very well. The Zora town had very elegant music to match its blue and ivory colors. The desert setting in Gerudo Village had a very hollow-like sound reminding you that you're surrounded by an empty and vast desert, yet it had a very nice acoustic tone in the background to give some liveliness in the town. In the Goron village, it's a very simple piece with this jazzy plus reggae vibe. It's weird, but it sounds really cool. It has a simple beat which represents the simplicity of the characters and it shows how big their personalities are. And the stable in Rito village has this very soothing tone, which is great to just listen to, and it makes you want to fall asleep, but in the good way, don't worry. And finally, the main theme from the beginning of the game is one of the best songs I have ever heard in a video game. It reminded me of Nate's theme or Skyrim's main theme. I know, right? I wish they had cooler names. It is extremely memorable and was not expecting it when I started playing it. It was the best way to start this amazing game. Overall, the sound design earns a 20 out of 20. The songs are so easy to listen to, and that main theme is so memorable in my opinion. The The story is very simple. You don't have to play any of the other games from the series, but they do give various references from past entries. It mainly focuses on the journey, not the characters, and the characters themselves are very simplistic, but gives us enough personality to care about their lives. Like when I first met the character Revali, the champion of the Rito, who controlled the divine beast before Ganon killed him 100 years ago. I hated how much of a complete jerk he was. I didn't even like him for the fact that he was different from the other champions. He was just rude and arrogant, and it annoyed me. But then while I was searching for Link's lost memories, I found that he wasn't a jerk in general, but he was simply jealous of Link. He felt that he was superior than Link and felt like he should have been the champion of Hyrule. But yet he wasn't, and I liked that a lot. He also had this incredibly diverse vocabulary that not only showed us a deep contrast with the ever-silent Link, but it also adds to his snobbish behavior. I believe this is the first time Nintendo ever added a rival for Link, and while his time wasn't very long, it was quite impactful. Just that little bit of extra character development that got me from hating his character to liking him quite a bit. But there are a lot of other diverse characters, the champions in specific. The shy but kind Mipha, champion of the Zora, who loved Link so much that she made him a set of armor, which in her culture meant that she wanted to marry him. And then when I saw her ghost, a man tear shed that day. The simple yet overbearingly charismatic Daruk, the champion of the Gorons, who seemed almost like a leader to the other champions. His vocabulary wasn't as diverse as Revali, but his words had impact. And the cool and confident Urbosa, champion of the Gerudos, who was a lot like an older sister to Zelda and gave her a lap to sleep on and words to pick her up when she felt despair. And Link doesn't have much. We are given a few things like his everlasting loyalty to protect Zelda even to his dying breath, which he did. He died for Zelda, and if it wasn't for the shrine he woke up in, well, we would be playing this game now, would we? It's very different from the other games in the fact that Link never had an obligation to protect Zelda other than to save Hyrule and the world. But the character that surprised me the most was Zelda herself. When I first heard her voice, I thought, oh great, another princess in distress. So original. And I thought that for a while, but then I found something really cool. She is a direct contrast to Link. To Zelda, Link is everything she is not. Link was 100% completely ready to face Ganon. He had his family and the people supporting him. He was told from birth that he was meant to be a royal guardsman and to become the ancient hero who would steal Ganon away. But Zelda? She didn't have the people's support. They thought of her as a failure. She tried her best to awaken her sleeping powers, dedicating her life to prayer every single day, yet when Ganon came, she was powerless before him. She let her father, her people, the champions, and Link down. She was also brimming with personality. My favorite scene with her was when she was talking about the different plant life. I went to this little monologue about this one flower, and then she tried to make Link eat a frog. In that one scene, we saw so many different emotions that she felt entirely humanized. She wanted to be a scholar, to research the beings known as the Guardians, but her father banned her from doing, commanding her to spend her every moment trying to unlock her power. She is incredibly smart and has a very diverse language, again contrasting with Link's silent persona. Now, the villain Ganon has almost no real story in this game. All we're told is that 10,000 years ago, he came and was defeated by the combined efforts of the goddess, her champion, and the divine beasts. Now, hearing this, you would think that maybe this is how the story would be, that we would gather the divine beasts and defeat Ganon. No, that already happened to Ganon 10,000 years ago, and Ganon learned from his mistakes and took the proper measures to ensure that that wouldn't happen again. This was the first time, from what I could tell, that the heroes lost. Like the Empire Strikes Back. The heroes lost. That's all I really liked about Ganon, though. Other than that, he plays no major role than to simply be an obstacle to Link. He's no Kafka or Joker, and that bummed me out a lot. But he does make up for this by having an epic boss fight and giving us a pretty cool theme that I don't believe the Zelda franchise has ever used. Redemption. That's what this game is. It's like the Return of the Jedi. It's not you preparing to fight Ganon, it is you redeeming yourself after your loss 100 years ago. And the champions also signify this as well. Every time you awaken their divine beasts, they give a little monologue more or less saying that, yeah, we lost the first time, but we're back now and we're ready to beat you. I like this theme a lot, and you don't see it very often. In Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption, you saw this a lot and it reminded me of that. Overall, the Zelda story gets a 20 out of 20. Story was long enough. characters were fun and each felt unique, and it had just enough characterization and developed just long enough for there to have some very well thought out themes. Now, if I could give this a score over 20, I would. I've never seen a world that felt so intentional. I remember I was at the top of a cliff and there was a tower up ahead, so I decided to glide down to that tower. I swear, without any sort of wasted flight time, I glided perfectly from the edge of that cliff to the lowest platform of that tower to begin my climb. That was done intentionally. Someone took their time to make a cliff just high enough and the tower just low enough to perfectly glide to the first platform. Not the base, not the second or the third platform, but the first. Once you get done with one thing, you see something in the distance that makes you want to go to that. But then you can do 5 to 10 different things while going to that one spot, whether it be fighting a random boss, completing a shrine challenge, or doing a fun little minigame to get a seed from a little forest spirit. But what I liked the most about this game was the concept of shrines. In a Zelda game, you had typically 8 or so dungeons you had to complete to get certain items and to basically progress the plot. Ever since Ocarina of Time, the Zelda series kept a more linear path, while the games before it allowed you to fight any dungeon in any order. In Breath of the Wild, it took that a step further, where again, your only true goal was to defeat Ganon. But there are 4 main dungeons that give you access to very useful weapons and powers, from getting full health after losing all your hearts to charging up a lightning attack. After those, there's the final level where you face Ganon, and then we have shrines. They act as waypoints to teleport to, but mainly act as mini dungeons, which can last from literally 30 seconds to 5 minutes. There is one where you take a giant metal ball and you walk forward deflecting other balls until you reach the end of that shrine. Now, there are shrine quests that take a lot longer, but are a lot more fun. My favorite shrine quest was when I was near the end of my playthrough. I flew to an island where it told me that I had to leave all my gear behind and grab 3 orbs, where I had to face many enemies and even a boss. It made me think back to when I first started this game, having only a stick and my wits. It reminded me how far I've come since the beginning, and when I got my equipment back, I didn't take for granted the stuff I earned with my skill. At the end of the shrines, you can get some cool armor, gears, weapons, etc., and you get a spirit orb. Once you've collected enough, you can improve your stamina or health bar. In the prologue, you learn how these shrines work, as well as getting access to runes, and they're pretty much what you'll be using to complete each puzzle. They vary from throwing bombs to stopping the kinetic energy of an object. You know, fun stuff. These runes more or less act as your way to solving all of your puzzles, both in dungeons and in the overworld. Now, shrines not only made you want to do them to get the orbs, but they also act as checkpoints, as a lot of them were right next to stables in other towns. They gave us a break from the main quest. Again, the idea that everything was done intentionally, even the length of these mini dungeons. Overall, the design in this game is very solid. The game itself was well over 100 hours of playtime and have some of the most unique puzzles I have ever seen. 20 out of 20. Now, the combat system is really solid. It's one of those easy to learn but hard to master kind of concepts. You can't roll away, but you can do jumps to avoid enemies, known as a perfect dodge, which can be used for a strong counterattack, where a perfect block does the same thing. Now, this game is hard, and you will die a lot, especially if you try to face Ganon or a Guardian in the beginning of your playthrough. Your gear can break pretty quickly, and when you think you have plenty of arrows, those also go by quickly, and then you're in a real pinch, especially when you're fighting a Guardian and you can't hit them. However, this game rewards you a lot on tactful thinking. Instead of facing 3 goblins by yourself and your sword, you can shoot an arrow to knock over a fire near some explosives to blow them all up, or roll down some rocks or bombs on a perfectly curving hill, or expose yourself so you can lure the enemy in and taking them out one by one, and then stealing their teeth, horns, and guts, to make potions. Oh, okay. But bosses are quite difficult and require, again, tactful thinking and require quite a bit of concentration, especially during the Gerudo dungeon, or as I like to call it, the Camel dungeon, where the boss there was very challenging, and I died about 8 times or so until I was able to defeat it. Now, the dungeon concepts are a lot of trial and errors. They mainly require you to move around certain areas of the dungeon until you're able to get it to that certain point where you can progress to that next part. Now, dungeons don't take very long, except the Camel dungeon, as that took me almost 3.5 hours, while the one after it only took me around 40 minutes, which annoyed me how great the difficult gap was. between these two dungeons, but I'm not grading it based on difficulty. So I won't criticize the game on that level. Let me know you guys saw the Camel Dungeon. Now, the runes were a lot of fun to play around with. I remember there was a ball sitting atop of a pedestal, so I decided to shoot an arrow so it could fall down, but the one arrow didn't have enough force to make the ball fall, so I was stumped. I couldn't move on without the ball, and I couldn't climb to grab it, so I thought of using my runes, maybe that weird one involving kinetic energy? It stores kinetic energy, so I used it on the ball and I shot with an arrow twice. So now, the ball was affected with double the power of an arrow, and it fell over and I could progress through the dungeon. A lot of the runes do this, and it's a lot of fun when you figure out which one to use, and it's incredibly gratifying. Now, what I loved most about this game was that it didn't have a tutorial. I remember my last game was Final Fantasy 15, my last new game at least. And I'm not gonna lie, I dreaded the tutorial sequence that bored me for the first 20 minutes of the game. But in The Legend of Zelda, it fit very organically. It puts you in an area where you were atop of a very tall cliff where an old man asked you to get 4 orbs in order to get a glider to go down the cliff. From getting those orbs, you not only learned how to use your runes, but also learned the rules of the game. Like how the environment could kill you without the proper clothes or food. This could be added with level design, but I decided to not include it here. Mechanics earn a 20 out of 20. The controls were tight and the runes were very easy to learn at first, but at times were challenging enough to make you feel something when completing a puzzle. And any mistake you made was your fault, not the game's. I stood outside of a GameStop for over 7 hours waiting to get my copy of Breath of the Wild and my Nintendo Switch. And I remembered when I was a senior in high school and I first saw the trailer of this game. It fascinated me how different it was from all the other games of that time. And when I first started, I knew this game was going to be good, but it surpassed every one of my expectations. The first game I was intending on reviewing for this channel was Final Fantasy 15, but overall, I felt the game was pretty mundane compared to other games like The Witcher 3 and Dark Souls 3. But when I played The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I thought to myself, so this is what it's like to play perfection. Now, my favorite game of all time is Kingdom Hearts 2, and no game will ever take that spot away from it. Maybe we'll cover that when the PS4 remakes come out. But The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is currently sits as my second favorite game of all time, as I still have to complete The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. But I could tell this game was built with a lot of love and dedication. I'm glad I could play this game, and that this game was my first one to start this series on. It had great music, tight controls, amazing puzzles, and really solid characters overall. The music was really good, and that main theme though! For me, this game is something that all future open world games should follow. This is not only the best launch title ever made, it is one of the best of the generation, decade, and maybe in Zelda's history. This game has a 20 out of 20 for enjoyability and an overall score of 100 out of 100. I never thought the first game I covered would earn this high of a score, but hey, anything is possible. I hope that games will take a look at this and learn that this is how you make a game. The Zelda franchise has captured my heart, and I can't wait to get started in my Ocarina of Time Let's Play on my other channel. And with that, stay tuned for my next review. Please don't forget to comment, subscribe, and like. And with that, keep it real, guys. Bye.